Small spaces, 15. What? Snapped Brian, jerking awake himself. Ollie, what? Ollie was still breathing hard. Even though it was cold, she had fierce sweat on her face. She wished she could brush her teeth. Nothing, she said, just a dream. You were screaming, said Coco. She looked as though she'd been awake before Ollie yelled. Must have been a pretty bad dream. Yeah, said Ollie. She didn't want to say anything about her dreams. She sat up. There was just headroom for it, and looked around her. Flat morning light trickled into their little cave. They had slept in one tangled and uncomfortable pile. Ollie's skin felt clammy. Her leg was asleep. Brian sat up and said, I was really hoping last night was a nightmare. I was looking forward to waking up in bed. Me too, Ollie admitted. But we're here, said Brian. Not a nightmare. No, said Ollie. How'd you know, Ollie? Asked Brian. You believe the bus driver? You went into the woods and all this happened. You were right, but how could you have guessed? It's a long story, said Ollie. I'll tell you, but I have to pee first and I'm hungry. They all looked nervously at the mouth of their little cave. Do you think they're gone? Coco asked. Cautiously, she poked her head out. I can't hear anything. She crawled all the way out, stood up slowly. Seems okay, she called. Ollie, feeling nervous, crept out of the cave, trying to stamp feeling back into her leg. Brian emerged in her wake, breathing on his cold fingers. Ollie didn't know what she was expecting. Some sign of their kidnapped classmates, at least a stray glove here and there. But there was nothing except for churned up leaves and their 3 selves. The sky was the color of snow, but without the sparkle. The air was chilly and damp. Ollie wished she'd worn warmer clothes. Coco was nowhere to be seen. Ollie turned in a circle. Coco, where? I'm up here. Coco had scrambled atop the boulders that had formed their little rock sanctuary. No sign of the others. Ollie was impressed. The rocks were steep and slippery. Brian whistled. How'd you get up there? Coco peered down. She looked, Ollie saw with surprise, happier than she had ever looked at school. I was junior rock climbing champion back home. I never climbed outside, just in the gym, but I liked it. I had friends and everything, but people here only climb outside, and my mom says it's not safe. I haven't climbed in a while. I miss it. Coco giggled, a strange sound in that grim forest. If only Mom could see me now. Can you see anything up there? Ollie asked. Coco on the rocks was pretty confident for a tiny person who was so clumsy on the ground. She turned in a slow circle, squinting. Trees, she said. Trees and... Coco paused. The river, she cried triumphantly. Just there, I can see it shine, and something red. The farm! We're not lost. Lethe Creek, said Brian, and Misty Valley. We should go down to the farm, get help. Do your phones work? Mine still doesn't. Ollie checked. No service, it said, with dashes where the time should have been. I don't have much battery either, she said. She turned her phone off again. Might as well save what was left. Brian was doing the same. Brian was right. They should head down to the farm. Ollie glanced at her watch. River, it said, and a new countdown had started. 6 hours, 37 minutes, 41 seconds. Coco skidded down the side of the boulder and landed on her feet. My phone doesn't work either, she said. I checked this morning. Where do you think the others went? Coco shivered suddenly. No idea. We have to go get help, said Brian. The police will have sniffer dogs and things. He went over to a tree in the direction Coco had pointed and pulled off a strip of bark, marking the direction of the farm. He must actually be in the Boy Scouts, Ollie thought, remembering the Eagle Scout comment the night before. That might take too long, Coco pressed. They were kidnapped by scarecrows. We have to help them. Apparently, Coco held no grudges for the gum or the notebook or a dozen other things. Ollie felt a reluctant admiration for Coco Zintner. Right, about that, said Brian. Ollie, how did you know about getting away and hiding and the scarecrows and everything? If it weren't for you, we'd... He trailed off. Yeah, Coco chimed in. Thanks for saving us. Ollie hadn't thought of it like that before. You're welcome, she said awkwardly. I didn't know. Not exactly, but... Hang on, I have to pee. She went behind a tree, like on a camping trip. When she came back, Coco was looking like she wanted to do the same, but was really embarrassed. Go on, said Ollie, amused. It's better than a gas station bathroom. Coco went and came back fast. No, it's not, she said, sneezing. It's cold and wet. Ollie grinned and plunged into the story of stealing small spaces of Beth, Caleb, Jonathan, and the Smiling Man, of the strange similarities between Misty Valley and Smoke Hollow, of the bus driver's warning. She pulled the book out, let them read the epigraph. So let me get this straight, said Brian when she'd finished. Jonathan made a deal with this guy, the Smiling Man, who brought his brother back to life. Then Jonathan disappeared, and then his brother disappeared, and then the schoolhouse fire kids disappeared. Assuming they weren't burned to death. So, what, have we disappeared now? Maybe, said Ollie. Put so clearly she wasn't sure. I mean, the book was right about the mist rising and stuff, and about avoiding large places at night. If we hadn't found the cave, we'd have been grabbed too. Is this all because of the Smiling Man, then? Whispered Coco. Who is he? Do you think he's around? 100 years later? I don't know, said Ollie slowly, wishing she could say. Of course not. Maybe. Well, the bus driver said his people are coming. Those breed the scarecrows, I guess. Maybe they work for the Smiling Man? Or could all just be coincidence, said Brian impatiently. In math, when two angles coincide, they fit together perfectly, Ollie said. All of this has to fit together too, somehow. A small frown appeared between Coco's pinkish eyebrows. But the schoolhouse fire kids didn't make a bargain or summon the Smiling Man or anything, did they? Neither did we. So why? Why us? I don't know, said Ollie. Deliver us from evil, Brian said suddenly, and crossed himself. The girls looked at him. What? He said. I'm not a good Catholic, but maybe God is listening. Maybe, said Coco. She shivered again. I wonder who else is listening. I hope not the scarecrows. They all glanced around at the silent forest. They could see no one but themselves. Well, said Ollie, if we have disappeared, can we assume that this place is somewhere else, like a horrible sort of Narnia? Not our world at all, and when the mist rises, you fall through the door? Maybe the scarecrows sort of exist in both worlds. The bus driver said something like that their only danger is here at night. Something about them being partly in the sunshine world during the day. Even to Ollie it sounded far-fetched. Narnia? Said Coco, sounding puzzled. What's Narnia? The Pevensies go to Narnia through the wardrobe where it was under the control of the White Witch, said Brian. That's why it was always winter but never Christmas. Don't you read? I don't like novels, said Coco with dignity. I like books that tell you about real things. So you think the Smiling Man is the White Witch? He controls this place? Is that what you mean? Ollie hadn't thought of it that way. They didn't even know if the smiling man was real. Someone has to be doing this, Coco continued. Maybe the scarecrows are like robots and someone is pulling the strings. A white witch? A smiling man? Robots don't have strings. That's marionettes, said Brian. Whatever, said Coco. Then Brian said slowly, if you're right, then maybe there's not help waiting on the farm. Maybe that's where the puppet master is, and that's worse. But if there are any answers, they have to be on the farm, Coco said, not here in the woods. And, she added practically, we can't just stay here. We'll starve. Not today, said Ollie. She pulled out her lunchbox. She was getting hungry anyway. 3/4 of a huge turkey sandwich, a chocolate chip muffin, carrot sticks, a bag of homemade granola, a slice of pumpkin pie from the farm, and peanut butter cookies all lay nestled in her big unicorn lunchbox. And Ollie had never in her life been more grateful for her dad's overpacking. I have this, she said. We should eat the turkey sandwich soon anyway. The meat won't keep. Coco was rummaging in her own backpack. She pulled out a large bag of trail mix. I have this. They both looked at Brian. He scraped a foot in the leaves. I ate my snacks yesterday, he said, a little shamefaced. I got hungry on the bus. Boys. Ollie and Coco had the same thought at the same time. They looked at each other and Ollie almost laughed. Right, she said. We should eat and then make a plan. That's what her mom had always said on hiking trips. If you're ever lost, think of your basic needs first. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you hurt? Ollie wished for the millionth time that her mother were there. You can't eat all our food, said Coco to Brian, holding her trail mix a little defensively. We have to make it last. Brian looked offended. I'm not dumb, he said. Hey, we shouldn't argue here, said Ollie to both of them. We need to keep our heads. Coco relented. I'm hungry too. It was kind of an apology. I won't eat all the food, said Brian, still cranky. Ollie passed around hand sanitizer and handed out pieces of sandwich. I know it's not very breakfastish, she said half apologetically, but Brian and Coco were already eating. This is fantastic, said Brian, munching his sandwich like Thanksgiving on brown bread. My dad baked the bread himself, said Ollie, trying to suppress a surge of longing. On winter weekends, her dad would get up before anyone else and get the fire going. Then he would drink coffee, watch the news, and start mixing pancake batter for breakfast. Gingerbread, buttermilk, sometimes cornmeal. The smell would wake Ollie up, and she would pad downstairs just in time to catch the first pancakes coming off the griddle. Then she and her mom would play chess while her dad flipped new pancakes and egged them both on. Her dad was probably frantic, Ollie thought. He would have spent the evening waiting for a bus that never arrived. People would be looking for them. They would be searching the farm, checking the road in between, looking for wrecks. They might find the bus, but Ollie was pretty sure they wouldn't find any people. The mist had risen and they had disappeared. Like Caleb and Jonathan, like the schoolhouse fire kids. But there had to be a way out. There had to be. Coco was eating her quarter sandwich in tiny bites. Brian had already finished his. Ollie sipped from her water bottle, then passed it around. Coco and Brian gulped the water. Being terrified makes your mouth dry. Hey, slow down, said Ollie. The water might have to last the day. She wasn't going to think about the night. Surely they'd be home by then. Sorry, said Coco, handing the bottle back. It was more than half empty. Ollie tried not to worry about it. They couldn't do anything just then anyway. She clasped her lunchbox again, put it away. So, she said, what now? We need a way out, said Brian. What about the others? Cried Coco. We need to get help first, said Brian. What are we going to say if we do find help? Asked Ollie. Our classmates were kidnapped by evil demon scarecrows. Please help us. Maybe not exactly that, admitted Brian. But what else are we going to do? We can't help anyone if we're dead. And Ollie, your water bottle is not going to last forever. You're not wrong, said Ollie slowly. She glanced down at her watch. 5 hours, 29 minutes, 37 seconds. And river. Let's head to the creek then, she said. It runs by the farm, it's a source of water, and it's downhill from here, so it means an easier day. All the while she was making reasonable arguments, a thought was creeping in around the edge of her awareness. Was her mother's broken watch helping them? I think Ollie's right, said Coco. We can't stay here, and maybe there'll be people there. Or a clue. Something. Ollie broke in hurriedly. I think you're right. She wondered if she could tell Brian and Coco about her watch, about what she thought it might mean, but she couldn't. She was afraid of seeing pity in their eyes, sympathy face, of having them tell her that hope had clouded her judgment, that her mom wasn't really talking to her. Even a featherbrain is right occasionally, said Coco, a bit sourly. Brian grinned. It's just because you're so little and pinkish that people think that. You think that, said Coco. Not anymore, said Brian. There was a slightly awkward pause. I don't have a better idea, said Brian. Then let's do it, said Ollie. She picked up her backpack. Okay, said Coco, grabbing her own backpack. But I really hope you guys know what you're doing. Nope, not at all, Ollie thought. She looked up at Brian and saw him having the same thought. She grinned suddenly. You can't, she decided, be super scared for very long before you start just laughing or crying. And indeed, Brian snorted, and then they were both laughing, and Coco was staring grumpily between them. Her pink, pale hair stuck up like she was a fuzzy baby bird, and somehow that made Ollie laugh even harder. A sudden wind picked up and raced through the trees, bringing a splat of rain. The cold drops slid under her jacket and the collar of her sweater. Ollie calmed down. Brian looked from side to side, set off downhill. Coco followed, skidding on leaves. Ollie went last, trying not to look too often over her shoulder.